Hello and welcome to the sixth episode of Restoring Eden. This is Sini and Subin and Apu. Our little boy is joining us today. I don't know what he's going to do, but he's going to be here. If you hear these noises, it's him, and we are going to move on. So in Germany, things have got a bit relaxed, and we could go out. To little lakes, to a few parks with our son, and that really makes us happy because, we haven't really met people except one family, which makes us actually feel like we really miss people. But things have been good. God has been good to us and has been providing in wonderful ways.
Summer is finally here and it's warm, sunny, and hits of peaks of 35 degrees. Our winter jackets are kept away, and we get time to spend outside and work outside in our homes. Being in Germany, you are responsible for the pavement around your property. That means you have to ensure that it's clean, clear of weeds, leaves. It does not have any water damage on it, although it's public property. So today we are going to talk to you something that we learned last week on a very hot day. A wrong day to work on the garden and on our front area of the house, but we did so, and it was quite exhausting. But between all that, God had been teaching us some really cool things, and we thought we could share that with you, because as we kept pondering about this, we realized how much it has to do with the relationships and our personal lives. So here we go.
So in Germany, there's this rule that, like Subin said, that we have to take care of everything that's outside our house, even if it's public property. So on this really hot summer day, we decided, maybe we should do that. And as we stepped out, we started pulling out the roots, and I was complaining because this was the second time this week that we were pulling out the weeds, and I was like, okay, well, when you plant like proper plants, like we've planted a few veggies this year, they have taken like forever to bear fruit, while the weeds in the same week, I actually took it off on a Wednesday after work. That week I had removed all the weeds, and on Saturday these things sprung up again. And I was telling Subin, I don't understand why the weeds have to grow up so fast, and the veggies and the good plants take so long.
I think there's a way that we have to take weeds out, and this podcast is soon turning into a gardening podcast. But then the truth is about weeds, they are annoying. Like Cindy said, we had taken the weeds out a few days or almost a week earlier, and she did that part, and I did the part of the house. And way she did it was she cut out the weeds at the place where she could see them grow, and expected them to not grow further, or expected them to wilt away under the hot sun. But the thing is, the weeds are always quite resilient. They are very persistent, that they would grow, and they would grow between bricks, under the crevices, under bricks. That's one of the strangest things that we found about weeds. So when I had to start working on the weeds, I had to actually lift out pavement stones, slide my knife under them, and try to find their roots and slowly uproot them so that they are actually gone. But the more I tried to do it, and I realized, oh my gosh, these weeds have been spreading their roots so deep under, and they are fast and they grow very fast, and they reproduce at a very strange level. So I went back online, searched more about weeds, and just came across a number of things what weeds do. Like, they take away the nutrients from plants, they take away space, they're ugly, they take away water and sunlight and stop plants from bearing fruits. They entangle plants, and they even attract unwanted animals. And as we were talking about it, we came to this place where saying this reminds us something about life.
I disagree with the part that he said they are ugly. I don't think they are ugly. They actually look good. I mean, they had like purple leaves and everything. But the point being, let's not talk about more about weeds. The point is, why are we talking so much about weeds? Exactly the reason why Subin ended his talk with. The reason we talk about weeds so much is because it has so much correlation or a very close similarity to our lives and to a few things what Jesus spoke about in the Bible. So basically, we are not going to get into like topics about the word and the seed being planted, which is very familiar in the Christian sermon, system. What we're going to talk about is about weeds in terms of relationships, because that is what we deal with mostly in our podcast. And one of the things that we have been seeing over the this time of corona is that the longer we stay at home, I think we spoke about this before, that it was getting a bit difficult for us to manage everything, and there were a lot of communication issues between me and Subin and I. And now it has come to a place where I'm going for work and he's at work, and we have a very energetic child to manage, and it's all good and we are all enjoying it. I enjoy my work, he enjoys his work, but somewhere we lost the energy to actually come back and communicate and speak. And this is a very, very normal thing in families that have both the parents who work, and somehow people think that they talk but they actually don't talk, and that actually sows a lot of weeds in relationships. And today we are just going to explore a few dimensions to that, and not everything, but we want to talk about that. So what I want to make clear before we move on is that no relationship as such, as in I'm talking about committed before God, the relationships that are ordained by God, they are not, people are not the weeds necessarily, but there are a lot of things that the enemy, like we read in this chapter, can plant in our relationship. And like we were talking about the weeds that were outside our house, we may just see the outside, the surface level changes, but there might be roots that are growing really deep, and we need to recognize them. And because that's the only way, recognizing that there's a weed is the only way to actually dealing with them. Because if you don't recognize it, if you're not going to talk about it, if you're not going to bring that up, you're basically going to end up having, over a few years, just a lot of weeds and a few good fruit in between, but the weeds are eventually going to kill the good roots. So there can be a few weeds that the enemy plants in a marriage or in a relationship. And it can be even a relationship with your parents, but we are mainly talking about marriage. and it can be an addiction. It can be any sort of addiction, not necessarily porn. It can be just your phone addiction, which is not spoken about. It can be addiction to yourself. It can be a result of a bad relationship that you were in before, or before you came into this marriage. It can be an unsolved conflict, because sometimes there's a lot of people, because I'm in the medical field, there's a two different there are two different mechanisms of how people react to conflicts. Either this one is fear and you run away, and the other one is you confront, you fight. So people who choose to just run away or just avoid the topic, what happens is this thing starts building up, and everyone knows that when you build up stuff, eventually it'll burst. But what happens is, in relationships, things go on really smooth, and you're living your life, you're going for work, you're coming back, you're at home taking care of the kids, or you have your kids stuff going on that you're so busy, you don't really come down to a place where you recognize, or you put your finger on something that actually is an issue between the two of you, and that thereby producing an unresolved conflict, which can produce bitterness over time, which you might over a few years not even recognize where that bitterness came from. It might be something really small. It could be a fear. For me, for example, I have a fear of trusting people because of a lot of things that have happened in my life before, and to completely give away myself to someone, it's a learning process for me still. And the more I get to know Subin, the more I can trust him, the more I can let go, and just that fear controls me in some way or the other very often. So these are just a few things that can appear as weeds in relationships. And with that, I think I will hand it over to Subin.
Yeah, thank you, Sini. Weeds are not a person. Let us get that clear. Weeds are not the bad person in your firm, or a bad person that you met on the way. I cannot go to a person and say, you are the weed in my life, and I'm going to pray to God to take you out of my life. No, they're not a person. Weeds are something that are in our life, something that person that who has hurt you have done in our life, and we have reacted not in the right manner to it. For example, there's other places where weeds are, and one thing is, since the last month, that is June, I and Sini had been on full-time work, taking care of a child, making food, keeping the house clean. I go to Bible college online in the weekends. We have a church in the weekends. We have a small house to keep clean, and the week food, to prepare and keep some to cook easily, some to cook later. So all these events together consumed our time, and we always thought that we are talking to each other, and there were things that we found a bit annoying with each other, but since we had enough more work at our hands, we never found a place to explain that the other person was stressing us out, or even our work was stressing us out. And we both kept a brave face and said, no, this is what God has called us. This is what God wants us to do. Provide for a family, support a family, be loving to our spouses, show honesty in our work, and like many people say, keep a brave face and go on. That's what we did, without taking a time to examine our lives, to talk to each other. And this bubbled in a hot boiling lava of frustration that often had us burst at each other, like how lavas do. But we were never at that place where we understood that this was something deeper. And a few days later, we took some time off, and we were able to sit and talk and ramble about a lot of things. And then we understood, oh wait, there were these things that we wanted to tell each other and we had not. And after having said that, we realized, oh yeah, they were creeping up like weeds in our life. Like I said, weeds don't grow like plants on a very beautiful, or like a sunflower, that stands out tall and strong, that for everyone to see. But weeds grow in the between the rocks, underneath rotting wood, or underneath some plants that we do not care to look often. And they spread their networks very well. And by the time we realize, we're like, wow, there's a lot of weeds and a lot of work to be done. And that is something that God was teaching us in the weeks that God was showing us about the physical weeds. And one thing He was reminding us is they need to be worked constantly. Not that they're a one-time thing and you get rid of the weeds one time. You have to keep getting rid of them as much as possible, because if they've been unchecked for a while, they actually germinate and reproduce from their roots, even some of the weeds. So you would have to go in with a knife and you're like, this root is here. You pluck it out and then you're like, wait, there's one more tiny root there. Find the way between the rocks and you're like, oh, there's another weed there, and pluck it out. And this is something that we have to do in our lives too. Find out the roots and then constantly work. So I think one tip is constantly be ready to work on your weeds. Find a break in your family life, in your marriage life, or even if your relationship with someone else and you realize there is this unresolved things. Find constancy in working out what is not working in the relationship, like doing a health checkup for the relationship.
That is one way you can check on the weeds, asking, communicating. But I think the most effective way in a family, in a union of two people, is to present this before God. And I think that is the most open place where you can be, the place where you will be accepted, you will be loved, and you would get a solution for, not a solution. God actually heals us from the inside. So so this is not a one-time process. And think in a marriage, you have to constantly keep going to God together and asking God to actually show us, throw light on those places in our hearts. It is a heart condition that I think we are all clear on that. So it is a heart condition, and so the only person who knows our hearts the most is God, and He knows us, and still He loves us. And so we are safe in that place of vulnerability before God. And so if you can take the time off, and once you can present yourself and your heart to God, I think that is the place where God actually transforms us, and that He takes out these weeds. He shows us these weeds. And maybe it's not a one-night transformation. Maybe there are things that need to be worked on. Maybe there's a counseling that has to take place. Maybe there's an entire church that has to pray for you on this topic. It could be a lot of different ways that God chooses to deal with our issues. But at least in the presence of God, it is all brought into the open. It is in the light, and it is a light that does not condemn us. So in that place, there is a remodeling and there's a refixing, and we have to come back to God every single time. And there is no other way around it. I know there are a lot of practical questions a lot of people have, and there's questions that sometimes don't seem to get quick answers. But I think in order to wait till the answer comes, we need a special guidance from God, sort of strength from God to show us how to wait and what do we work on as we wait. And what are we exactly waiting for, and what is our heart condition as we are waiting. And this I'm talking about, for example, a spouse who's waiting for the better half to come to know the Lord. And obviously that is a place where you cannot go with your spouse to the Lord in the presence of God. In those cases, I think waiting and praying and being on your knees and going back to God over and over again when conflicts occur, when things go wrong, also when things go good, is a place where God teaches you and God leads you. And our God is, he's a very faithful, good Father, and so He does not just give these commands and ask us to do it. He has today something that I read in the Bible was, we are the children of God, and we are the children of God because the Spirit of God is in us, and if we are led by the Spirit of God. So and He leads us. Leading is not exactly controlling. He shows us how to do it, and He's very kind and He's very patient with us, so we can trust our Lord to pull out these weeds, to deal with them. And just hiding them and growing something else on top of it's just not going to help. And we can make it all beautiful. Your garden can have a lot of beautiful roses, and yet there can be a lot of weeds growing there, and it's very, very dangerous in the long run. For a relationship, it's toxic. So go to God, get your problems before Him, and He is good enough. He can take care of anything. And I go back to, again, those weeds that I spoke about. I'm sure there are there are many other issues that people have. Like, one was addiction, the one was after effects of a previous relationship, the unresolved conflict, a fear. And these things are what God deals with. And God deals with me. For example, I have a problem with fear, and God deals with the roots, and He knows exactly where they come from. So that's the greatest part. He knows everything, and so we can trust Him to restore us.
So I hope this gardening tip has been really good for you. Jokes apart, I hope and we pray that God helps you as you go back this weekend. Start looking at these things. Help us also understand. There are things that many of you know about this more deeper than us. So contact us on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, and we could chat, we could talk on this, and even help us learn as God is teaching all of us together. Thank you so much for being a part of our week this time, and God bless you, God bless your families, and keep you guys safe, and keep you strong in terms of Corona and everything that's going on. Do connect with us on Twitter with the handle RestoringEdenDE, and on Facebook and Instagram with the handle RestoringEden.de.